Thank you for joining us today. I'm Clarissa Bayat, Union Pacific's Chief Communications Officer, and it's National Rail Safety Week. And at Union Pacific, nothing is more important than safety. And that means safeguarding every employee who moves the freight that keeps our economy moving, but also safeguarding every person in the community where we travel across our network. So while trains play a very important role in our society and they transport the goods we all use every day, too many people are injured or killed near the tracks. And so we really want to talk to you today about safety, and our experts are going to share what you need to know to talk to loved ones so that we can be safe around the tracks. First, an important disclosure. And can we go to the disclosure slide? Before I introduce the presenters, thank you. So I want to emphasize this, and then I'll introduce our great presenters today. But the nature of this conversation and discussion, we want to make sure that we stick to the approved agenda so that we will not be discussing prices, credit terms, or procedures offered to any customer. We won't be talking about pricing or stabilizing pricing among competitors. We are not talking about how we allocate customers or territories. Contract provisions in general or for particular customers will not be discussed. Discussions of our pricing strategy or marketing practices will not be discussed. Boycotts, refusals to deal, comp and benefits, any topic that would give even the appearance of a discussion of prices or practices will not be touched upon. So I just want to make sure we open with that disclaimer. So with that, let me introduce our amazing experts. So we have Rod Dorr, who's our Chief Safety Officer at Union Pacific, Buck Russell, who's our Senior Supervisor in Public Safety, Robert Bavier, who's our Senior Director of Hazardous Materials and Operations, Lisa Stark, who's our Vice President of Public Affairs, and our special guest, Tareen Crippy, who is the President of Safe Kids Worldwide and one of our phenomenal partners when we think about being safe in our communities. So at the end of this conversation, you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions, and you can actually start asking them now. We actually received some questions we probably have about a dozen questions we've already received in advance of today's webinar. So if you joined and you already have questions and haven't sent them in, you can send them in at any point. The way you do that is you scan this QR code to submit your questions. If for some reason you can't safely scan that code or you can't access that, and you need a more simple way to get questions to us, you can send us questions via email at connectup@up.com. So questions can come to us both of those ways. Now, let's move on to why we're here. So first, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the strategy of Union Pacific. And when we look at our strategy, we have safety, service, and operational excellence with equal growth. And when we talk about that, there are 5 elements of our strategy. One is the purpose of this call. Union Pacific wants to be the best at safety. We want to be the best performing and the safest railroad in the country. And right now, when you think about it, a UP train can travel around the earth 49 times before there's a derailment. And our derailments have decreased by almost 30%, 28% in the past 10 years. But we still have to get better. And you'll hear more from our speakers about the things we're doing about safety. The next component of our strategy is service. We deliver the service we sold our customers. We know there are dozens of customers who joined us today. Thank you. You entrust us to move what you need to fuel your business safely and to deliver that in the way that you asked and the need to deliver that the way you need. And so we rise to serve. And we launched a Service Performance Index just to look at how have we performed in the past 3 years, and then how do we beat that performance as a benchmark based on the service you asked of us. So that's what service is all about. another element of our strategy is using our assets wisely, asset utilization. And so we want to make sure when we're working across our rail system, the nearly 30,000 employees that are closest to the work are empowered to make the decisions. And so we look at that and we look at using assets wisely. And when we look at asset utilization and the next pillar, cost control, we want to make sure when we're spending the resources that we spend and when we invest what we invest, which is about $10 million a day just on improving our infrastructure and doing things to move things for our customers and stay safe. But we want to make those investments and spend that money wisely. And that's what cost control is all about. We also always have a buffer for the unexpected. When we go through today's presentation, you'll hear about situations that may be unexpected. The way we recover quickly is by having a buffer of both trains as well as resources as relates to people. And we keep that buffer to move quickly. And then the most important part of our pillar are people. And you're meeting some of the best of them today to talk to you. But we really engage our people in our communities. And part of connecting with you, we know there's nearly 300 of you who've joined, whether you're a customer, whether you're a member of the community, whether you're a partner. We are so excited to talk to you today and to talk to you about our number one priority, which is safety. Next slide. I'm going to play this video, and then we're going to have Rod Dorr, our Vice President and Chief Safety Officer, join and talk to you a bit after this video. Thank you. When a bold team rises on machines of steel and gold, buffed and buffered with passion and pride, we become the fleet. We rise to defy all obstacles and to beat all odds, knowing winning is the pursuit of what is possible. Building bridges and scaling mountains, we weather frost and fire. Connecting at the intersection of imagination and innovation, we are Union Pacific. Our strategy, safety, service, and operational excellence is our key to growth. To be the best at safety, we look out for each other. We carry goods with courage and care for customers counting on us, safeguarding communities depending on us, ensuring everyone makes it home. To deliver the service we sold our customers, we bring food and fuel to nourish the land, grow economies, heat homes and hearths. We energize industries, moving construction cargo, chemicals, petroleum, and plastics. We transport transportation, hauling finished vehicles and their parts for all major manufacturers. We move the world, serving all 6 major gateways, leading service to and from Mexico, sustainably connecting our continent with commerce from across the globe. We do this with operational excellence, powered by predictable precision, speed, reliability, and resilience. We are thoughtful about asset utilization, empowering those closest to the work to make the best decisions. We exercise cost control, spending resources wisely with a buffer for the unexpected. We know people make everything possible and engage our teams and stakeholders, listening to their needs and investing in their success. We are legend and legacy, steam and dreams, made of the engines that shaped our nation. We are one fleet. Born from steel and powered by will, we carry the weight of the freight that fuels our world. We are Union Pacific. We're off to a great start, and with that, over to you, our Chief Safety Officer, Rod Dorr.
Good afternoon. My name's Rod Dorr. This is my 34th year railroading, and most of that time, 32 years of it, was here at UP. Could not be prouder of this company, and I can't be more pleased with the way this company has invested in and embraces safety, and that is our primary objective. I want to define here for you our safety strategy. And in the broadest terms, it's defined by 4 pillars. We work on serious injury prevention of our employees. I should really say all injury prevention, but our focus as of late is the serious injuries. These are the debilitating injuries that fundamentally change the quality of life for an individual and, frankly, their earning power for their family. We want everybody to go home safe, and we take every initiative to see risks in our environment and eliminate them. The next portion of our safety strategy is really defined by leveraging technology. You saw some of that equipment that we're leveraging on the video that Clarissa just displayed. We're using as much technology as we can to get people out of harm's way. And in addition to that, we've got a whole new host of technology we're working on. I call it real-time monitoring. Ours is a factory floor that has no roof, and it spans 32,000 miles. We are in the elements 24/7 with changing lighting conditions, temperature, precipitation, etc. And so our employees need to understand those changes and what additional risks those changes bring during one of their shifts. And so we're trying to highlight those risks so, again, we can work on strategies to eliminate the risk, mitigate that risk, so that we can keep our work environment as safe as possible. And that extends not only to our employees, but our public interface points. Think about crossings, the material that we handle as we move through our communities, as well as various other stakeholders. We see this as a whole enterprise solution. This is not just myopic on factoring in just how we at UP stay safe. We've got a much broader responsibility to the community and to our customers. The next piers of our safety strategy really involve the culture we're trying to commit to or trying to build. If I look back over my 34-year career, I joined this company and we were still a very militaristic-based company. Our history comes from the military. And so it was very top-down. There was no interchange between frontline management and senior management. And it was just salute the flag and go do what was told. We have tried to morph away from that with varying fits and starts, but here lately we have invested a huge sum of money and effort in trying to understand where our employees see the company, how they feel they can best interact with the company and our processes, and how do they choose to be trained and what resonates with them. So our commit program involves getting our management team out to work with employees actually in the workplace. So we watch switch crews work and we understand what is their challenges and how we can improve the environment. Likewise, our peer-to-peer engagement, it was individualistic when I first started with this company. We really didn't give a hoot about our co-worker. They would come to work, they'd do their thing. I would come to work and do my thing. Now we're trying to encourage where we work together as teams. And when I see, for example, Buck or Robert perhaps taking a risky behavior, I'm going to raise my hand and say something. But likewise, I expect them to do the same for me. We are human beings, and none of us are perfect. And we come to work trying to do the right thing, but we may not see the risk in front of our face. And that defines the four legs of our stool, if you will, of our safety strategy. If I can move on to my safety journey. When I first started railroading, it was in Livingston, Montana. I was assigned a switch crew. And I was the switchman of our job that was switching bad order cars, those kind of cars that needed mechanical repairs, into a facility in Livingston. And it was one of those nights where it was very still, no wind, and a light snow was falling. And perhaps some of the folks that are on this call can think back to similar settings where that light snow really dampens down the noise. It's a very quiet, still environment. I was throwing switches and I was looking across the yard for our next move, and I found myself walking between the rails. Nowhere in our environment do we authorize or approve that behavior. It was a stupid, frankly, thing to do. And I found myself there, and I had just stepped out of the gauge of the rail when a boxcar went by that location. I could feel the draft of the boxcar on my face. And I can remember sitting in the snow thinking how close I came to killing myself or seriously injuring myself. And in that prone position, in the snow, on a cold winter's night in Montana, I committed to myself I would follow every rule to the best of my ability. Fast forward 20 years, 25 years. I found myself a superintendent up in the Twin Cities, and I was on my way down to Omaha for a staff meeting, and I was doing what we called FTX testing. So this is where we observed our crews working in the environment. And I found myself in Mason City, and we had spent some time working there that morning with several of the crews. I then worked my way down to Des Moines, and I did the same thing. And then I took Highway 80 over to Omaha for the staff meeting. Midnight 30, the night of my arrival in Omaha, I was woken up. I was awakened and was sent back to Mason City because we had a serious incident. And I come to find out that one of our crew members had coupled themselves up, meaning they were in the red zone between two cars, and the couplers came together and seriously injured. In fact, so serious, it was a fatality. We did the investigation. I worked with the FRA, our federal regulator, and the NTSB, the rail division of the NTSB, to figure out what had happened and what had gone wrong. 3 days into it without sleep, we believed that we understood what occurred. I left Mason City to go get some rest. The home for me at that time was in Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And no more than my head hit the pillow, the phone rang. We had a train collision between two trains, one Canadian Pacific and one in Union Pacific in Mason City. I had failed the team. I had failed to job brief and make sure everybody understood what had occurred to a beloved team member there in Mason City. So everybody was distracted talking, and at the end of the day, I believe those two trains came together because everybody was so distracted and not focused on the work. I wasn't going to make that mistake again. 2 weeks transpires, and I find myself in Des Moines for our fatality, our employee who had lost his life. I was sitting in one of the side pews, and I got to see that his spouse and their 3 small children, the children crying, all clinging on to their mom because they weren't sure what had happened to their dad. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is an image I will take to my grave. And that is why I am so committed on safety. We need to protect our employees for sure. But the extent to which when a safety incident happens and it's broad brush affecting so many people, whether that be a derailment in our communities or our employees or crossing accidents, is so extreme, we must focus on safety. All right, moving forward here, the slides. These graphs, one showing employee injury rate, the other showing derailment rate, proves that our safety strategy is paying dividends. We are not first class or first place in the industry yet on employee injuries. We're second place, moving from last place to second place by virtue of our work on safety. I firmly believe if we stay entrenched in our safety strategy, the 4 pillars, we will take first place, and I'll put a marker out there. We will take that first place next year. Derailments, we are much improved. Clarissa stated about 28% improved in our derailment performance, but here we have more work to do. We've got a lot more work to do. I will not be satisfied until we too lead the industry. The idea here is to keep all of the product in the container, that being the rail car, and the rail car on top of the rail. That is how we serve our customer and we keep our community safe. Next slide, please. Our courage to care. This has been around a while. This came out of a summer where we had 6 fatalities approximately 10 years ago. Thanks to Clarissa and the communication team here at UP, it has been greatly simplified. The spike used to have Latin in it. Nobody here at UP knew what the heck it meant. And so it simply now says, go home safe. And the credo below it has been simplified as well. The point here is we all have a responsibility at Union Pacific to have a focus on safety and to keep each other safe. And that goes beyond just the 4 walls of our company. It has everything to do with the driving public, our customers, and the communities we serve. And at this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Buck Russell and Robert Favier. Buck?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Rod. My name is Buck Russell. I've been with Union Pacific for 27 years, 13 of that as a locomotive engineer, and I've been very fortunate to be in the public safety role for the last 14 years. But unfortunately, I have to deal with, according to the Federal Railroad Administration, about every 3 hours a person or a vehicle is struck by a train. And some of those points that I can give you is, next slide, please, as you approach the grade crossings, please slow down, look both ways, and proceed when you can entirely clear the crossing when your vehicle. If a train is approaching, of course, stop no closer than 15 feet to the nearest rail. A train could look closer and be moving faster than you think it is. And if there is an emergency at the crossing, say your vehicle becomes high-centered, there's other concerns at that crossing, look for the blue and white ENS sign. And what is that sign? Next slide, please. The sign, there will be 2 of those signs. They will have the railroads, dispatching railroads toll-free number and that crossing's unique address. And then underneath it will say the name of that dispatching railroad for that crossing. And if your vehicle becomes high-centered, there's some other incident where you cannot get off the crossing, immediately get out of your vehicle, get all your passengers, get out of your vehicle. And if a train is approaching, run in the direction of the train at a 45-degree angle. Because if you run the direction the train is going, you may survive your vehicle being struck by the train, but the debris field from that strike could unfortunately injure you or your passengers. Look for that blue and white sign. Immediately report that emergency to the dispatching railroad so we can get folks on their way to help you. Also, we can immediately get word to the trains of that emergency. We can get the train stopped, slow down, or whatever that emergency situation dictates that we do. Next slide, please. One of the big problems we have, the Federal Railroad Administration tells us in 2023, there was 1,378 trespassers struck by trains in the United States. 715 of them did not survive. That is just absolutely horrible. So people that are around the railroads, you need to look for a train approaching at any direction at any time. Cross only at designated crossings, and that's where the street intersects with the tracks. Never walk between the rails, just like Mr. Dorr was saying. Only go to those designated crossings. Remove those distractions. Remove your headphones. No talking on the phone. No looking down at the phone. Stay away from trains, the bridges, the trestles, the yard, and all railroad equipment. Always expect a train at any time in any direction. A train traveling at only 55 miles an hour can take a mile or more to come to a stop. And trains don't have a steering wheel. All the train crew can do is put the train into emergency braking, and then the train is going to take a mile or more. That's 18 football fields back to back to back. When I was on trains, driving trains for 13 years, unfortunately, I did have 3 very unfortunate incidents. I struck 1 vehicle and unfortunately 2 trespassers. So I do, just like Mr. Dorr, I've lived through bad experiences that drive that passion. Why I have such a passion to change the behaviors and make a difference in the 7,300 communities that Union Pacific operates in. We do take our crews and we talk to them a peer-to-peer assistance. Also, we offer them some clinical assistance to ensure that they can come back to work, their family lives are okay, because they're not really prepared to go to work and see some of these unfortunate incidents with vehicles or trespassers on our property. Next slide, please. But we do offer a program called UP Cares. It's a Union Pacific Crossing Accident Reduction Education and Safety Program, where we have trained volunteers to go out in the communities and educate on Railroads 101, kind of a high-level operating, how do we operate, and some of the do's and don'ts around the train track, to include looking for that blue and white sign. These presentations are no cost. They normally bring some handouts for you, also some goodies to take home, some trinkets to help remind you of that railroad safety message. But next slide. As we enter the harvest season with corn, sugarcane in Louisiana, the peanut harvest, we want to remind the harvest activities, the farmers, that these crossings that you're probably using are only used during this time of the year for that September, October, May, November timeframe. And if you need to call Union Pacific, we ask that you call Union Pacific. Let us know about these unusual heavy haul, slow moving activities so we can notify our train crews to be extra vigilant. And keep in mind, if there is any type of emergency, somebody becomes stuck on the tracks, immediately get out of the vehicles and look for that blue and white sign and let us know so we can notify the train crews. But now what I'd like to do is introduce Robert, who's going to talk to you about Union Pacific's hazmat mission.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for this invitation and joining us. My name is Robert Bavier, and I lead our Union Pacific Road Hazardous Materials team. We have a 4-pronged mission. We have 18 members, and in that mission is prevent, our preparedness, response, and recovery. Each one of those programs are very specific, and I will get to them in a trailing slide. Next slide, please. Yes. Our mission is primarily focused on prevention. Our prevention is our #1 goal. We want to stop the release before or when it's minimal and work with the shipper and consignee on how to make those corrections. How does that happen? Our team inspects over 5,000 rail cars a year. Anecdotally, that's about 10 miles of ladders climbed between 18 members of our hazardous materials team. More ladders climbed than most large city professional fire departments. We're looking for any type of failure that may exist, securement issues, loose valve problems, those things, making the corrections immediately, and then working with the shipper, whomever was the last person or last company to touch that rail car, and work with them on corrective actions. We also work with our train crews, ensuring that we have the train in proper order certain hazardous materials can't be next to other occupied compartments and other materials. We conduct crew audits to ensure that the crews know what to do in the event of an emergency. What are their duties? What are positions of hazardous materials in the train? And how to communicate that emergency. We conduct training with our employees and customers. The training involved with our customers, how to load and unload rail cars safely, and ensuring that they're following proper loading procedures throughout the industry and abiding by the federal government rules. We're members of continuous improvement committees all across the system, whether that's local with a local emergency planning commission, or on a larger stage with the Association of American Railroads, and helping to guide the future of construction of rail cars, response activities, descriptions of hazardous materials. In the preparedness section, we do a lot of training. We train over 5,000 public responders system-wide. We do that in a variety of ways. It's conducted via online. They have online classes that are completely self-paced and driven. We have produced online webinars like you'll see right here. And we also do a lot of in-person. And that's sharing the hazardous materials message, how to safely respond to emergencies involving Union Pacific Railroad. So responders get an understanding of what they can expect in the event of an emergency. And it goes over a wide variety of activities. First and foremost, how to contact the railroad, what to expect from an emergency, and what's the paperwork involved. To ensure that that training has stuck, we work and conduct drills and exercises around the system. Some are small scale, only involving a handful of folks, a dozen or less, up to large scale incidents involving over 200 participants in a day or 2-day activity. And what are we doing? And when we conduct these drills and exercises, we're exercising our plans. A plan without exercise and drill is just a piece of paper or a document on some screen. And so we have the variety that you see here, our hazardous materials emergency response plan, a comprehensive response plan that's dictating how we're going to respond to an emergency company-wide, community right to know, and our Open 90 plans are how we address the storage areas that can store more than 1 million gallons of petroleum product in a facility. Next slide. Response, like Rod and Buck both said, is safety is our #1 priority. Safety for our employees, the communities, and the responders being associated with whatever response happens to be there. How do we do that and ensure that that safety is first and foremost, is we coordinate the response. We work with the public responders, fire and police, the regulatory agencies, FRA and TSP, and certainly our specialized contractors. They are our assistants in responding to any type of railroad emergency that we happen to have. How do we coordinate that? Is with our response duties. It's very familiar for those public responders that happen to be on this meeting today. It's analyze, plan, implement, and evaluate. To keep it simple for responders, we call it API. So sometimes this is a relatively fast undertaking. Other times, based on the technicality and the situation, this could take a long time just to plan for the incident and make ready our entries. Once the incident has been stabilized, we go into what's called our recovery phase. And again, just like an incident, it's very dependent upon the circumstance. Recovery could be very rapid and back to normal train operations, the communities back in their homes and where they need to be, or it could be lengthy. So what do we have to do here? We're responsible for product removal and transferring those products that may be damaged in a container but not leaking. The container may not be able to be transported via the rail anymore, so we're going to have to safely remove that chemistry from one container to another. Once that's complete, we still have to decontaminate and clean that rail car before that damaged rail car can go anywhere, whether it's back on rail or via highway or some other form of recycling. Incident restoration is critically important. We have an entire team that does that, and they're there to ensure the community and the areas that were contaminated in an emergency are brought back to the state they were prior to that emergency occurring. To terminate the incident, we conduct debriefings. That's done immediately with all the first responders that we can get together. Post-incident analysis to look at how to better respond to this type of incident. Again, we conduct internal critiques and incident reporting. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, Lisa, over to you. I apologize.
I'm happy to cede some time to you, Robert, if you'd like to cover. Not a problem.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'm Lisa Stark, and I am in my 15th year at Union Pacific, always a part of our public affairs team. So today, as critical stakeholders, really our customers and communities are an integral part of rail safety. With over 30,000 active railroad crossings on our network, it is imperative that we focus on truck driver as well as public safety around the railroad tracks. So today I want to provide a little information that I hope you will be able to use as guidance within each of your own organizations. So first, Union Pacific has a public projects team that serves as the primary point of contacts for communities, public agencies, customers, and other entities who might be developing or working on projects that may involve railroad property. Those projects can include grade separations, changes to existing railroad crossings, new crossing requests, road construction, or interest in developing a new recreational trail that may intersect with the railroad property. But of note, I want to make sure I point out that any roadway improvement or construction proposal that may affect Union Pacific or be near our right-of-way must be evaluated by our public projects team and others internally to ensure the safety of the public, our employees, and customers. So that might sound like a big task, and sometimes that does take a long time, but one great thing that our team did was to streamline UP's review of those projects. The public projects team developed a manual which provides guidance on project requirements that may involve railroad property. So we ask that any entity that is planning to do a project that may interface with Union Pacific review the manual prior to contacting UP, which will really help expedite the project review process. And a question we get a lot of times with regards to railroad crossings is who's responsible for the maintenance of a railroad crossing? So just to provide that clarification, the roadway authorities are responsible for signs, pavement markings, intersection traffic control, the approaches to the railroad crossings, as well as all the sidewalks approaching the railroad crossing. But then the railroads are responsible for maintaining the crossing surface, as well as all of the lights and gates. So we have included a link to our public project site that is on this slide. And that will contain a link basically to all the information I just covered, as well as more to at least get you started in that process and providing an overview of really what that consists of. Next slide. So as we head into winter, a tool that my team uses to communicate with our communities is what we call winter weather notification. And each year leading into winter, we share weather-related snow clearing and safe driving reminders with our communities. And what we're specifically asking our communities to do is minimize application of treatment materials at railroad crossings, particularly on the track itself. But we want our communities to make sure also that they know that they can plow the crossings. We also want communities to familiarize themselves with some of the preferred methods for plowing at railroad crossings, and then always again be thinking about safety. If you are plowing near a railroad crossing, please do not pile snow up underneath the gate arms or any of the other electric mechanisms, because those could essentially lead to some equipment malfunction and or decreased visibility for motorists as well as our train crews. So a tool that we provide as part of this winter weather communication is giving public entities a kind of safe trips for the driving public that they can utilize. So if you look on the right-hand side of this slide, we've got basically a camera-ready slide there that can be utilized on social media or in community newsletters, just to help the public understand how they should be behaving and thinking about driving in the snow, particularly also as it relates to around the railroad crossings. Moving on to the next slide. Thank you. Another tool we use to enhance safety is through what we call our community event notification process. And Buck touched on that a little bit, thinking about where we're coming up in harvest season right now and making sure the railroad is contracted if you're going to be moving loads of grain or other large quantities in trucks over the railroad tracks. But the other thing is while we 100% strongly discourage event organizers or others that are planning activities, that they don't plan those activities that would go over railroad tracks and hopefully not in close proximity to railroad property. And examples of those types of activities would be a marathon or a bike race that's routes goes over the railroad tracks, or parades, for example, that propose to go over the railroad tracks. So again, we are asking that any entity that is going to host an event, whether or not it goes over the railroad tracks or is in close proximity to our property, to notify Union Pacific of that. And, we're constantly reminding people that as they're planning or conducting events on or around railroad property without notifying us, you could really be putting the participants of your event at risk. And again, we really want to utilize that information so that our train crews are aware that an event may be happening in an area that they are traveling through. Next slide. So if you are interested in learning more about rail safety, I encourage you to visit this website, which is very simple, up.com/safety. You'll find a plethora of information on that site, including guides for kids and teens, things that communities can use, ways to report unsafe events or behavior that may be seen there, and obviously a whole variety of other things. Next slide. Thank you. And then just in wrapping up my portion of today's content, I'd like to just very briefly highlight how UP supports communities through our philanthropic Community Ties Giving program, which has 4 key focus areas as we think about how we invest in communities. And those are safety, workforce development, community spaces, and environmental sustainability. And I'm super excited to share one example of how we've invested in safety through our support of the Ray Graham Association, which is an organization located in the Chicago area that supports people with disabilities through life skills support services and development. And I think this is just so cool because UP funding was specifically used to design a new railroad safety program, which started with the classroom instruction. But what's super cool about it is the program culminated in a train ride on the Metro commuter rail system to downtown Chicago so that all of those participants could actually practice safety in the community, both on and around trains. So it's now my pleasure to turn the program over to UP's longtime partner, Safe Kids Worldwide, with Tarina at the helm, who's going to talk to us about the work that Safe Kids is doing to educate kids and parents about changing and instilling lifelong safe behaviors around train tracks. Tarine?
Thank you, Lisa. I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Tarine Kreppy, President, Safe Kids Worldwide. And I've been doing this work with Union Pacific for the past 6 years, but have been involved in child injury prevention for the past 25 years. I'm really excited to share this shared responsibility that Union Pacific and Safe Kids had for nearly 6 years. And I'd like to share a brief video of our public-private partnership that captures the highlights of our partnership. Hi, I'm Tarine Kreppy, President of Safe Kids Worldwide, and I'm excited to share the accomplishments of a wonderful 6-year partnership between Safe Kids and Union Pacific Railroad, which are a testament to what is possible when 2 like-minded organizations team up to prioritize the safety of children and families. In our first meeting, the leadership at Union Pacific challenged us to find safety messages that would stick. As we always do, Safe Kids started with the data and learned that many parents and caregivers were not aware that every 5 days a child dies as a result of a rail incident. So parents were not even thinking about rail safety or rail-related risk, and very few were talking to their kids about rail safety. To address this reality, we work with Union Pacific on several awareness events and educational programs reaching more than 22,000 parents and children from preschool to teenage years, including families in hard-to-reach areas and those living near railroad tracks who needed us most. We produced a storybook, Clifford and the Railroad Crossing, in both English and Spanish, distributing more than 80,000 books, which we know are going to be read again and again. So we're reinforcing those safety messages for the parents and the kids, helping the next generation establish safe habits from an early age. And we incorporated evidence-informed rail safety messages into other materials, resources, and videos that reach more than 768 million people through traditional social media and in-person events. And that is just a small sampling of all the work we did together. The good news is that all that work over 6 years did indeed stick. We saw a 16% increase in awareness nationally, an 11 to 21% increase in awareness in our target communities, and most importantly, we saw parental behavior starting to change. In fact, parents who remembered seeing one of our social media posts were more than 30% more likely to talk to their kids versus parents who didn't remember seeing a post. If there's one thing I've learned in all my time at Safe Kids, is that there is perhaps no greater gift than making a positive impact on someone's life, particularly a child's life, and that's what we did together. My hope is that these results will inspire future partnerships and investments in rail safety.
So as you can see, we know we can make an impact. And that's why I'm so excited to join this webinar, especially during Rail Safety Week. I'm grateful to everyone for helping to continue to raise awareness and educate families. We created a resource that will help. Our Rail Safety Station is an online hub with shareable content for educators, community partners, parents, and caregivers. The goal of the Rail Safety Station is to create community advocates by providing customized resources that you can take and use in your community. You see here today that Union Pacific have their safety team here. That shows you how coming together can make a difference. Next slide. Our community resources, the images of some of the resources. So we have lesson plans, fact sheets, downloadable activity sheets, tips, and opportunities to share personal stories. One of my favorite is the nostalgia of Clifford and the Railroad Crossing storybook that we created together. You can go on the safety station to request copies in English and Spanish. We also created a suite of videos that we encourage you to use and share, including a TikTok series called A Day in the Life, which educated and inspired teenagers by providing a behind-the-scenes look into the work of a UP engineer and conductor. And we'll be playing our Nothing video at the end of the webinar today. Basically, if you need it, our Rail Safety Station is a great place to start, and we encourage everyone to check it out. Thank you again for your commitment to rail safety, and most importantly, thank you, Union Pacific. I look forward to answering any questions at the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Doreen. You're such a phenomenal partner. And thank you to all of our speakers. And now it's our time to answer the questions that you've already sent in. So as you can see, you can scan the QR code or send us an email with your questions, but I'm going to get us going. Buck, the first question is for you. How many railroad signal colors are there, and what does each color mean?
Well, they're normally in a variety of colors. I think one of the neat things, it's just like a highway, red, yellow, and green, but then also we add a white signal. But like green, it means go. We call it clear. The track is clear to go. And it just, the yellow kind of talks you down that you may be coming up to a red signal. So it's just a combination of the signals, and it depends on track speeds and the systems that the train crews are operating on, that those signals means different things to them. I hope that answered it.
Helpful, great, Buck. And if it doesn't, we'll make sure in the email that you all get, we can actually give you a little very quickly in that email. Meg's on our team. She pulled all this together. We'll put what the colors mean in that email. So thank you. And if you want the book for Clifford, remember the website Doreen told you about. We'll make sure that that's also available if you want to order books for your I think someone just sent a note that they'd like to order one of the books. The next question is for Lisa. We have a question from a bus driver who's noticed limited sight lines due to trees or buildings, as well as crossings without lights or gates. What can be done to improve safety at those crossings, Lisa?
Great question. First thing I would recommend, one is contacting the railroad, and we will have a map with some contact information for you. You can contact someone who's a member of my team. More than likely on that type of situation that you were also going to be including potentially the Rail Safety Commission for that state, who's responsible for the railroad crossings, also UP's engineering team, and the local jurisdiction or the roadway authority that's there locally. And I would also reach out to the school district, who probably has some of those relationships in place already. The leadership at the school district who can become a very involved partner in that.
Awesome. And Lisa's awesome team is on that slide that just flashed, as well as a QR code to scan so that you can reach any member of our amazing public affairs team spread across our 23 states. Rod, the next question is for you. How does train length factor into risk for drivers at crossings?
Oh, great question. We know, you saw it on one of Lisa's slides, we have about 30,000 crossings that comprise the UP system. We run several hundred trains a day, and those trains cross multiple of those crossings. So you can see how the numbers add up very quickly to the number of vehicle train interactions that occur every day on UP. Longer trains reduce the number of those interactions, right? We run fewer trains, but the trains we do run are longer. It actually reduces, can prove to you that in the numbers, reduces the risk to the driving public. And that is one reason we have chosen to go after this operating model. We have held the line on our public safety, our crossing accidents for the last several years. The other factor that I'd ask you all to consider is in the last decade, there's roughly 9 million more vehicles on our nation's highways, and that's just an ever-increasing chance for a train vehicle interaction. And the point here is we need to educate the driving public and reduce the risk if we're going to move our number to improve our safety.
Awesome. Thank you, Rod. And also, if you want to learn more about train length and safety, we just published a story from Eric Geringer on our website, and we'll also include that in the follow-up email to this webinar. A really great story on up.com with the facts about train length. With that, let's go to the next question. Rob, this one's for you too. It's about police on the railroad. What does that mean? What does the term railroad police mean? What jurisdiction do they have? And how do they interact with local police departments?
Yeah, sure. Good question again. We do have special agents. They are a federally recognized police force. Our special agents all come from certified police schools, so they are all certified officers that come from the various states from which we hired them, police academies. Our law enforcement authority comes from federal statute, and if there is a crime associated near our rails or on our rails, we have the arrest authority. Our primary purpose here is to keep our employees safe when they're out working on our railroad, as well as our communities. We do ask that our special agents engage. Buck can tell you chapter and verse how they will be involved in crossing safety, as well as to keep trespassers. We see people not authorized on our railroad, authorized to be on our railroad as a trespasser. We try to move them off our property safely because, again, interacting with trains, if not done correctly, can be a dangerous activity. And the other aspect of our special agent's task is to protect the lading, the freight that we are shipping on behalf of our customers. We're trying to prevent theft, which happens on the railroad. We're trying to keep the bad people away and let the freight move freely across our network.
Awesome. Thank you, Rod. The next question is for Tareen. We heard some great tips for keeping adults safe. What can we do for kids? How can we start safe habits for young people at young ages?
Yes, thank you, Clarissa. I think the first thing is only cross train tracks at designated crossings. You've heard quite a bit of that today. One thing we like to say at Safe Kids is heads up, devices down. when walking, but most importantly, when crossing the tracks. So that includes if you're using a cell phone, headphones, or playing a game on your mobile phone. Remember to keep your head up and devices down. Don't be tempted to walk along the train tracks. It may be a shortcut, but it is dangerous and not worth the risk. If lights are flashing or the gate is down at a railroad crossing, wait for the train to pass completely. The gates to lift and the lights to stop flashing before crossing. And allow enough space for your vehicle to completely clear the entire railroad crossing, not just the tracks, before you attempt to cross. And we heard a lot about that, especially with what's going to start happening during harvesting. So you can see we provide the tips, and then we like to try to provide the why so people understand why these tips are relevant. And so those of you requesting a Clifford Takes the Rail, you will see a lot of those tips in the book as you can read to your children.
Thank you so much, Doreen. This next question is for Robert. Robert, how can I set up training with your team for our department? So we have a lot of local community folks who joined, and they want to know how can they get trained?
Sure. Great question. Thank you very much for it. It's very simple. So we provide training to our first responders system-wide, and that request can be made at hmm@up.com. Once again, hmm@up.com. I'll include it in the chat as well as with the follow-up email.
Perfect. Thank you, Rod. This next question is for Rod or Buck. If you had to name a type of grade crossing that you are most concerned about for safety incidents, what is it?
I'll defer to you, Buck.
I give a stab. It is actually, like we've mentioned several times, the harvest activities on the private crossings. Those are the ones that go to the Dearleys, Grandma and Grandpa's house, and the harvest activities are using those crossings now. October, November is so heavy with the harvest activities, and those crossings are normally only used during the harvest activities. So the train crews aren't used to seeing vehicles there. Other motorists are not used to seeing those vehicles there. So it creates conflicts with trains and also just the general motoring public, which a lot of times ends up affecting our rail operations also.
Thank you. Rod, in the event of a derailment on an industry lead, how fast are the tracks restored and what precautions are taken to make sure it doesn't happen again?
That's a difficult question to answer. Every derailment is different, a unique set of circumstances. So single car derailment, single wheel derailment, we can be operational within a very short period of time. If we have done considerable damage or tore out the signal system or we've impacted public roadways, we could be talking multiple days before we can get the railroad back open by virtue of working with road authorities as an example. It's a collaborative effort. So there is no one size fits all, but I can assure you our first effort is to secure and make safe the railroad environment. Then we move into a phase of investigating what went wrong so we can try to put in our suite of activities to prevent the next derailment of that type from happening. And then we go immediately into repair mode. And much of that is happening simultaneously. Hope that answers.
Thank you, Rod. And then I know we had a couple questions from a city manager in Durant, Oklahoma, and we just said in the chat that Ben Jones will contact you directly. Lisa, this one, others may have a similar question. It'll be a similar answer, but the city manager in Durant, Oklahoma, who do they speak with about cleanup of debris along the tracks in our area? And let's flash that slide again with public affairs. Lisa, quick audible.
Yep, sure. If you, excuse me, have anything involving the railroad that you are trying to get attention to or looking for collaboration or partnership on, please contact the appropriate public affairs person for your specific area. And they're color coded here. They're also available on our website, but they can really help with any navigation of a whole variety of issues, trespassing, homeless encampments, vegetation, and a variety of other things, and safety education.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. And Lisa's team is the all-stars. They're the front lines for all of you in communities who've joined us today, and they are amazing. So with that, we're going to get ready to close out. And as I said, we have promised to send you an email with everything that some of the questions that you talked about, with a link to, so you can watch all of this again, some resources. And with that, I want to play a brief video that, again, another video from our partnership. Tareen mentioned we'd be playing this. But something for you to think about as we close out this webinar. Thank you, everyone. Play the video.
I have nothing to tell you.
Nothing to tweet.
Nothing you'll read about in the papers.
Or see on the news.
That's because nothing happened. Because you taught your kids that walking on or along the train tracks is dangerous.
The trains are quieter, wider, and faster than we think.
And that a train won't be able to stop in time, even if they see you on the tracks.
And you modeled good behavior by never rushing across the tracks to beat the train.
And only crossing the tracks at a designated crossing.
So a tragedy was prevented.
A family wasn't grieving.
Nothing happened.
Nothing.
And for a parent, that's everything. To learn more, visit safekids.org.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Please keep that message in mind, and please help us celebrate and keep everyone safe during Rail Safety Week and beyond. Take care.